This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
Hello, my name is Brad. I review tech for creative professionals, and way back in January, Huion announced the Kamvas Pro 24. It's kind of a big deal because it was the first QHD screen announced by one of these Wacom alternative brands. And I was at Huion's booth at CES on the day they sent out that initial press release back in January. Somehow, I'm not quite sure, I completely missed it. Actually, I do know how. When I was at CES, there was a lot of stuff that was announced in a 2 or 3 day window. I was getting a lot of different emails and I was just kind of skimming them. So needless to say, I was pretty excited to see this thing ship and actually get my hands on it. The QHD screen is a big upgrade. If you saw my Huion Studio review a few weeks back, that was my main criticism. You're taking a 1920 by 1080 HD screen and you're stretching all those pixels out across a 22-inch display, and it made things really pixelated. But now we have a 2560 pixels by 1440 pixel display, and that makes a huge difference for screen clarity. I should also point out here that this is not a computer. It is just a screen that needs to be attached to a computer. These are called pen displays because they are displays or screens that can be used with a pen to draw on. So let's see what comes in the box. It's really heavy. Of course, you have the pen display itself. There's also a stand that gets screwed on along the back. We've got a power brick and a cord that connects it. There are all the connector cables that you're gonna need. There's an HDMI cable and also one of those old school VGA cables, if that's how you wanna roll. There's a USB type A cable, but not a USB-C cable. You have the pen, and you also have a holder for the pen. And if you open it up, what do you get? Extra nibs. We've got the instructions, also a cleaning cloth that's tucked in there, and oh yeah, what's this? A drawing glove. You want me to do the okay, let's do it. Let's break down the specs. We already talked about the 24-inch QHD screen, a resolution of 2560 pixels by 1440 pixels. It also has an 120% sRGB color range, which is solid. It looks good. It's got this matte glass screen on it that cuts down on glare. It also feels pretty good to draw on. It's not too slick or glossy. This is a laminated display, and again, that also adds to the niceness and newness of the entire feel. And the pen itself is battery free. It also has 8,128 levels of pressure sensitivity and 60 degrees of tilt. You have shortcut keys along both sides. In fact, there's 10 on each side, and you can customize them to any shortcut your heart desires. It also lets you use this thing left-handed without having to jump back and forth into the settings and fiddle around with it. You've also got slider bars on both sides. Those are great for zooming or panning or changing your brush size. And like the buttons, those are also customizable. What about the build quality? Well, it's exactly what I expected. It's not amazing, but it's solid for a budget price display. The buttons are a little wiggly, not all the cords snap satisfyingly into place, but those are things that don't really matter. But at the same time, when you're using it, you're gonna think, oh yeah, this isn't as premium as say a Wacom tablet. But then again, the price isn't as premium either. I like the way the touch sliders are calibrated along the side. Sometimes with these things, they can zoom too fast or increase your brush size too much, or maybe they're way too slow. This one feels good. As I mentioned before, this does come with its own stand. It works pretty well. You can set it up at pretty much any angle you want. It even comes with a little tool to screw it in. If you have something this big, chances are you're gonna use it as your primary monitor at some point in time, so you can set it up to that almost 90-degree angle. The one downside is that when you lower it, it gets a little bit tipsy. I would say if you want to use it above 30 degrees, like a 30-degree angle, you should be fine, but anything below that, it's just not quite stable. I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Squarespace. From websites and online stores to marketing tools and analytics, Squarespace is your all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and run your business. I like being able to see how many people are visiting my site and what content they're most interested in. With Squarespace's built-in analytics, I can quickly see page views, traffic sources, time on site, most read content, audience geography, and more. Get feedback on what's working and how I can improve my site. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/BradColbo to save 10% on your first purchase of a website or domain. All right, let's test out this pen. I'm gonna do some pressure here and apply lighter and thinner lines. And the first thing I notice is the pressure feels good, but also so does the initial activation, how light you have to press before you start to get a line. You don't have to press very hard at all. It also holds pressure pretty well around curves and around circles. Every so often it kicks in a little bit in an odd way on the lighter side of the scale, and I can kind of see that there and there a tiny bit, but it's not bad. Usually I'm not playing around on the super light end of the scale. I'm really on the medium side of the scale, so that works pretty well for me. But yeah, I think the pressure overall feels really, really good. Let's do some fast hatch lines to take a look at how we get some tapers on here. I think overall the tapers feel really, really good. It does seem to taper a little fast on the ends a little bit, but that is very mild. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not shoestringing. Oftentimes you'll see like your lines look something like that. It's not doing anything like that. It's just tapering off kind of a little bit more than I wanted to. But overall, you know, I give this like a 90%. It looks pretty good. Let's do a slow line test, and this is where I like to draw slow angled lines just to see if there's any wave. And there is a little bit of wave on this. I see about as much wave as I saw in the XP Pen tablet that I reviewed a few weeks ago, which is tiny, but still within the realm of what I consider acceptable. I like to grab a straight edge and do it with a straight edge as well to see if that improves it at all, because obviously your hand has some natural wave to it. And I can still see a tiny bit of wave, and but as you can see, these are more than acceptable. Right now, smoothing is off, but if I knocked smoothing up a little bit to like 20%, which is what I was drawing at earlier, it pretty much knocks most of that wave off. So overall, I'm feeling like this pen is performing extremely well. It's not performing quite as well as, say, a Wacom pen would, but it's performing really well considering that this is half the price. I'm probably missing the perfect opportunity to make a whole different video comparing the XP Pen's new 24 to Huion's 24 I've been talking about today. But no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to stick it in here. So looking at these two things next to each other, they're almost identical apart from the housing. They have pretty much the same specs, and since they're coming out at exactly the same time, I wouldn't be really surprised to find out if they're sourcing their screens from the same supplier. If you go on the website and you just read through the specs, there's one thing that jumps out that this has that the XP Pen doesn't, and that is a laminated display. But there is more to this than meets the eye. So, laminated display cuts down on the space between the glass and the screen below it, and therefore you have less cursor displacement when you place it down on that screen. They're great. We love them. Yeehaw! Fantastic. But here's the funny thing. When I put the XP Pen right next to the Huion and I looked at them when they were both on, I could not tell the difference between the laminated display and the non-laminated display, and I think the main reason why is because lamination is kind of a marketing term. I mean, I'm sure it's also a process where you mix them together. Maybe XP Pen just didn't list it on their website, but there's different levels of bonding or lamination that happens on a screen. For example, on your phone, that thing is really tight to the glass. On an iPad, that's really tight to the glass. Here, there's a little bit of space, but not a ton of space, not nearly as much space as there were on displays like this like 2, 3, 4 years ago. I'd say both are pretty good. Which brings me to my main point. These are pretty much identical. The drawing experience on both of these isn't as good as what you might find on a Wacom, but they're definitely good enough. They get you like 90% of the way there, which is what 90% of the illustrators out there need. And if they could do it for half or even less than half of the price, cool. I think if you're trying to decide between these two displays, go with the one that's cheaper, quite honestly, because they're both just so closely matched. The other thing to look for is on the XP Pen, you have a USB-C cable. That's the primary way of attaching it. So if that's the port you have on your laptop or your desktop computer, I would go that way. If you don't, if you have a VGA connection or you have an HDMI connection, Huion's already has that, so you don't have to kind of mess around with adapters and things. So that is the new Huion Kamvas 22 Pro. What do you think? Let me know down below in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you in a couple of days.